Hi guys, welcome back to another video on IONIC. So in this video we will be learning how we can use a component, a library provided by IONIC. So IONIC apps are made of high-level building blocks called components, and components allow you to quickly construct an interface for your app. And IONIC comes with a number of components including models, pop-up, and cards. We're going to take a look at what's available in IONIC, and I'm going to show you how you can use it. Now, before we start, I would like to give you a demo. Why do you even bother using components or UI provided by IONIC? Now here we have a same application running for iOS, Android, and a Windows platform. And I know Windows platform is dying and IONIC is not really supporting anymore, but we have a third option here. When you start your application with the flag -L, you get this lab. So here you can see how your application is going to look like on iOS and Android and Windows. So now if I click on this button, which basically it's a fab, so let's see, I click on that, I get this action sheet. So you probably use a lot of mobile application on iPhone, so you see this action sheet a lot in your iPhone application. Now similar to Android, we're going to take a look at, if I tap here, it shows me the action sheet, but look at the UI. UI is pretty much Android looking UI. So you see this kind of UI in a stock Android phones, for example Nexus series from Google. So this is the stock Android UI. Now we have this Windows, which is going to make you laugh. So if I click here, you get this sort of things here, because Windows platform is not supported anymore, and I don't know why they kept that in IONIC. But so you got the idea. So benefits of using IONIC components is that you write one HTML, you write one HTML with a couple of CSS classes, and IONIC take the responsibility of making your app look native to the specific platform. For example, if they're running on iOS, then app is going to look like it's a native app on iOS, even though the whole app is running on it's running on platforms web component. We'll talk about that web UI kit that provided by different platforms. So now let's take a look at the documentation of IONIC. So here we have IONIC action sheets, we have alerts. So here if I click on action sheets, it says show action sheet. It's a bit slow, but it's going to show you this is the action sheet that you can use. Now what you can do here, you can basically use this one code and just put that in an application, and when you build a code for a specific platform, that will automatically be converted to make it look like native. So we have alert, we have a badges, we have buttons. So let's take a look at the buttons. So these are the buttons available that you can use, and it's going to look like these in your iOS. So you see cards everywhere on iPhone applications. We have a checkbox, and that's gonna be a checkbox for your both platforms. We have date and time. So now you see a lot of applications have this date picker that you can choose a date from. That seems very complicated to create, but IONIC provide this nice little code snippet of code which you can use in your application and will show a date picker. So if I just take this and I copy this and I just paste that into my application, so let me put that into somewhere. Let's just go to home tabs. I know you guys can't see it, but I'll show you these later. So I'm just going to put that simple UI into one of the applications we're running. So I'm going to paste this here. Let's save it. And let's go back to our application, guys. And here we have this date picker. So if I click on that, there you go. I can, pick the date for iPhone. Now if I click here, I can pick the date here as well. It didn't actually work on iPhone, but we can customize it. We can do it. We can customize it later, specific to the platform. We have a fab. Fab is really cool. That basically gets you a button which has some Z index, so it stays on the top of all the other components in your application. For example, I have created this button, the plus button, with the help of fab. So if there was no fab, that would be very hard to create this kind of a button. So that basically stays on the top of all the components you have. You have a grid. Grid is basically used to create a layout in your application. For example, you want to customize the layout of your page and you want to have some smaller cards, bigger cards, so use a grid. A grid is great. Infinite scroll. So a lot of applications have this kind of infinite scroll, guys. So you can just keep scrolling and the data will be loading according to your scroll. So what happens is if you wanna, if you are working on an application where you have a lot of data sets and you're not able to fit those data sets in just a small screen. So what you can do is you can use this infinite scroll, and basically the amount of data you can load and in that screen, that will only be loaded. But when you go scroll down, it will load the next data into an array or in an object. I'll show you how you can use it later, but let's go through quickly what are available. So we have our input fields available. We can still customize that. List is there. Loading is one of the cool things that IONIC provides. It's really easy to create as well. So if I click on show loading, that'll show you this kind of loading please wait. So a lot of applications use this kind of loadings when they want to load the data. Basically, they make an API call to some server running in the world, and then they wait for data to be received. And during that time, you don't want your user to just stare at your application without knowing anything. So what do? You create a loading so that user knows that something is coming, so they gotta wait. We have a menu. Menu is really great. It's easy to use. So if I tap here, and then I can see the menu bar. We have a model. Model is one of the other great UI component provided by IONIC. So if I click on one of these, you'll pop the model up, and I can have the page, which basically a model, not an exact page, and I can use that for all the components that I want to put in. This basically is used mostly for sign up and login page, which don't really require to be there all the time. So you create those on the go by maybe creating a button, pressing on that, and you create a model. Nav. Let's go to nav. So nav, basically, you see in iPhone applications, there's a lot of child component that you want to show, then you use nav. So one nav can create a model or another nav inside this, and then that nav can have another nav inside this. So you can just continue doing basically child to child and child to child components. Popover. Let's take a look at popover. So popover is like you have some sort of text going at the back, and you see when I scroll down, you see the popover and you see the text just a little bit blur. That means popover. Now let's take a look at range. There's a lot of time you want to maybe increase, decrease some sort of a UI or CSS or something in your application. Then you can use this kind of component. That's really great. Sometimes you want to change the data and you want to have some sort of UI which helps you to do that, and this is great. Refresher. Now, a lot of times people go to one of the page in your application and then they want to refresh the data. For example, the data is coming from the backend and you go to the page, and during while you were on the page, the data updated in the backend, and your API basically doesn't trigger any event or doesn't really emit the data to the front end. So what do? You create a refresher and you get the user to tap and swipe down, and that makes the refresher. Now on that event, you can call the API and load some more data, and obviously you're going to be using Angular with IONIC to create all this logic. This is just a UI component which is great and very easy to implement in our application, but obviously the backend logic, the backend code in Angular will be done by us. We have a search bar, we have a select, so a lot of ways you can select. We have this female gender selection, game selection, there you go. We have notification selection, and there's different types of selection that you can customize. Slides. Now, a lot of time when your application loads for the first time, you see some sort of introduction of your application. So that means they basically create slides. Slides are very easy to create with IONIC. All you do is just copy paste this and fill the data in, and that's what goes into your slides. Really good stuff. If you want to create the same kind of slide in your native Android or iPhone or Windows code, I think you're gonna take much longer. It's gonna take much longer to implement and make it look like that nice. Spinners. A lot of times you want to have spinners there. Yep, we have spinners. Tabs are really a core component that is required for any application. You go to iPhone or Android. Now, all the bigger enterprise level applications have some sort of tabs UI that you have the tabs at the bottom. So I can show you this. This is the tab as well. Now we will learn how we can create an interface including tabs, also with a menu bar. So right now I don't see a menu bar here, but we will implement that later. So toast, a great way to show some sort of a message on an event to the user. For example, if they are going to sign in, and once they sign in, there should be a message that you successfully logged in. So if I tap here, you see the toast here, and it stays for a few milliseconds or 1 second, 2 seconds. You can define the time there as well. So I'll click here, and there we go. So we got different sort of toast available. Virtual scroll. So we have a virtual scroll. So it says your file was successfully. Now it's gonna go all the way to 500 entries. That's called a virtual scroll. Now these are the components that are provided by IONIC framework. Now as we are learning not Angular 4, but IONIC 4, which means this documentation is not a stable documentation. This is a beta documentation, and they will be adding a lot more components, a lot more information to these documents. Now if I take you to the documentation of the older version, which will give you some more UI components. So let's go here, and we're gonna go to IONIC framework, and then here I'm gonna go to developer, and I'm gonna go to framework docs. Now this is IONIC 3 docs. Here you can see IONIC 4 is coming, but we already started learning IONIC 4 because it's pretty much done. We basically got what we need to build application with IONIC 4, but there's going to be a lot of improvements will be coming in, but the structure and the core technology is there already. So if I go to components, you'll see a lot more options here compared to, I think there's not much more, but maybe a toolbar is another one that you have here. So you see this footer toolbar, stuff like that. So yeah, that's about it, guys, and thank you so much for watching this video. That was just a quick overview of what's available in IONIC 4, what are the UI components, and in the next video we'll learn how we can implement some of the nice components, UI components, into our application.